In the late 1960s, a mechanical monster was born that would change the American asphalt forever. A car so incredibly fierce that it did not just win street races, it actually terrified the people who owned it. Imagine pulling up to a stoplight on a cold autumn night in a brand new Chevrolet Corvette, feeling completely invincible, only to hear a deep, earth-shaking rumble rattle your teeth from the lane next to you. You look over and see a jet-black silhouette with a front grille that looks like a giant gaping mouth ready to swallow the road whole. Its headlights completely hidden behind black metal covers like eyes lurking in the dark. The light turns green. You hit the gas, but before your tires can even grip the pavement, this black beast unleashes a deafening metallic scream, melts its rear tires into a massive cloud of white smoke, and vanishes into the night. That car was the second-generation Dodge Charger, a machine that has held the crown as the undisputed king of bad attitude on wheels for over 50 years. But how did a company like Dodge, which spent the early 1960s building boring family sedans for school teachers, suddenly manage to capture lightning in a bottle and build the most menacing and sought-after muscle car in history? The real story is not just about loud exhausts and big engines, it is a wild tale of corporate desperation. A team of young designers who secretly broke every rule in the company handbook, and a legendary engine that was literally banned from racing because it was simply too fast for human safety. Welcome back to my channel, Modus, and if you are new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this is the place where we dig into the real engineering and true history behind classic cars. Today we are going all the way back to the golden era of muscle to uncover the absolute truth behind the legendary 1968 to 1970 Dodge Charger. To understand how this masterpiece was created, we first have to look at the massive failure that almost killed the Charger nameplate before it ever had a chance to become famous. In the mid-1960s, America was undergoing a massive cultural shift because millions of young baby boomers were finally getting their driver's licenses, and they did not want to drive the heavy, slow station wagons that their parents owned. Pontiac had just started the muscle car revolution by dropping a massive V8 into the mid-sized Tempest to create the 1964 GTO, and Ford was selling Mustangs faster than their factories could build them. Dodge, on the other hand, was completely left behind, as their lineup consisted of boxy, sensible, and incredibly boring cars that young buyers absolutely hated. Desperate to get in on the action, Dodge rushed their very first fastback into production for the 1966 model year, proudly calling it the Dodge Charger. While this first-generation Charger had some cool features, like rotating hidden headlights and a futuristic interior with 4 individual bucket seats, the American public took one look at it and completely ignored it. The car was heavy, expensive, and the long, flat fastback roof made it look like a giant electric shaver rather than a cool street machine. Sales plummeted from 37,000 units in 1966 to a miserable 15,000 units in 1967, and Dodge executives were seriously preparing to cancel the car forever. But behind closed doors in the Chrysler design studio, a young designer named Richard Sias was working on a clay model in his spare time, completely ignoring the official corporate design guidelines. Sias did not want to design a sensible fastback. He wanted to design a car that looked like a weapon. And when his bosses finally saw his secret clay model, they were so blown away that they immediately canceled their existing plans and gave him the green light for the 1968 redesign. Sias, along with legendary designer Harvey Wynn, threw out the old fastback design and created the iconic Coke bottle profile, which is widely considered one of the greatest automotive designs of all time. If you look at the side of a 1968 Charger, you will notice that the body is not flat. The front fenders bulge out aggressively, the doors pinch in tightly in the middle, and the rear quarter panels swell out massively over the rear wheels. This gave the car the physical appearance of a muscular sprinter crouching at the starting blocks, looking incredibly fast and dangerous even when it was completely parked. They also introduced the beautiful flying buttress rear roofline, where the rear window glass was recessed into the body, framed by 2 stunning pillars of sheet metal that extended all the way back to the trunk. When the 1968 Charger finally hit dealership showrooms, Dodge hoped the new look would help them sell around 35,000 cars, but they completely underestimated the American public. Dodge did not just sell 35,000 Chargers that year, they sold over 96,000 of them, forcing their factories to run triple shifts just to keep up with the overwhelming demand. So let me ask you a quick question to see how well you know your muscle car history. If you were standing in a Dodge dealership back in 1968 with a pocket full of cash, would you have ordered your Charger in a stealthy, hidden jet black paint job? Or would you have gone with one of Dodge's famous high-impact colors like Plum Crazy Purple or Sublime Green? Let me know in the comments below because I really want to see what you would choose. While the gorgeous exterior design is what got people into the showrooms, it was the raw mechanical muscle under the hood that turned the Charger into an absolute legend. For the average buyer, the Charger came with standard V8 engines like the reliable 318 or the punchy 383. But if you wanted to dominate the streets, you had to step up to the legendary R/T package, which stood for road and track. The standard engine for the Charger R/T was the massive 440 cubic inch Magnum V8, a colossal power plant that produced 375 horsepower and a massive 480 pound-feet of torque. The 440 Magnum was the ultimate street engine because it made all of its power down low in the RPM range, meaning you could step on the gas pedal at a red light and immediately fry your rear tires without even trying. But for the ultimate speed demons who wanted the absolute best, there was only one option, the mythical 42.6 Street Hemi. They called it the Elephant Engine because it was physically massive, incredibly heavy, and looked like it belonged in a commercial locomotive rather than a passenger car. The Hemi got its name from its unique hemispherical combustion chambers, which allowed for massive, oversized valves and incredible airflow that simply could not be matched by standard flat-headed engines. Originally, Chrysler built the Hemi engine strictly to dominate NASCAR racing, but NASCAR rules stated that if a manufacturer wanted to use an engine on the racetrack, they had to make it available to the general public in regular production cars. This rule, known as homologation, is the only reason the Street Hemi was ever born. Rated conservatively at 425 horsepower, though real dyno testing proved it was actually pushing closer to 500 horsepower, the Hemi was a highly temperamental racing engine that hated cold weather, constantly fouled its spark plugs during city driving, and required a skilled mechanic to keep it running properly. But if you knew how to tune it, and you found an open stretch of empty highway, a Hemi-powered Charger would accelerate with so much violent force that it felt like a freight train was pushing you from behind. However, despite dominating the streets and sales floors, the Charger ran into a massive physical barrier when Dodge tried to race it on the high-speed NASCAR superspeedways of Daytona and Talladega. At speeds approaching 180 miles per hour, the laws of aerodynamics become incredibly brutal, and the beautiful styling features that made the street-going Charger so popular turned out to be a total disaster on the racetrack. That gorgeous recessed rear window acted like a giant parachute, trapping air over the trunk deck and creating massive aerodynamic drag that slowed the car down. Even worse, the deep, recessed front grille acted like a giant shovel, scooping up air and creating massive aerodynamic lift under the front bumper, which made the car lose traction and float dangerously at high speeds. In 1968, Ford's sleek aerodynamic Torinos were absolutely destroying the Chargers on the track, leaving Dodge executives utterly humiliated. Dodge's engineering team knew they had to act fast, so they went back to the drawing board and created the Charger 500 in early 1969, which featured a flush rear window and a flat front grille, but it still was not fast enough to beat Ford. So, the engineers decided to stop acting like car designers and start acting like aerospace scientists, resulting in the creation of the most wild and insane American car ever built, the 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona. They took a standard Charger and bolted a massive 18-inch aerodynamic steel nose cone directly onto the front bumper to cut through the air like a knife. Next, they cut functional scoops into the front fenders to release the high-pressure air that built up inside the wheel wells at high speeds. And finally, they bolted a towering 23-inch tall aluminum wing directly onto the trunk deck to provide massive downforce over the rear wheels. It looked absolutely ridiculous. And Dodge dealerships had an incredibly difficult time selling the 500 street versions they were forced to build because average customers did not want to drive a spaceship-looking car to their local grocery store. But on the high banks of NASCAR, the Charger Daytona was an unstoppable weapon. On March 24, 1970, legendary driver Buddy Baker drove a Charger Daytona to a top speed of 200.447 miles per hour at Talladega, marking the first time in NASCAR history that any car had officially broken the legendary 200 mile per hour barrier. The Daytona was so incredibly fast and dominant that NASCAR officials eventually had to rewrite their entire rulebook specifically to ban it from competition, solidifying its place in racing history forever. For the 1970 model year, Dodge gave the Charger one final facelift before ending the second-generation production run, adding a massive wraparound chrome front bumper and removing the dividing bar from the center of the grille. But by 1971, the golden era of the American muscle car was coming to a sudden, tragic end due to rapidly rising insurance rates, strict new government emissions regulations, and the fast-approaching global fuel crisis. Dodge was forced to detune their high-compression V8 engines, reducing their horsepower to meet safety and environmental standards. And the raw, tire-shredding monsters of the late 1960s were quickly phased out in favor of slower, more fuel-efficient cars. The second-generation Dodge Charger only lived for 3 incredibly short years, from 1968 to 1970. But those 3 years were more than enough to write its name in gold in the halls of automotive history. Now, let me ask you another question to think about. If you had the chance to park a perfect numbers-matching 1969 Charger in your garage today, would you want a fully restored, showroom-clean original model, or would you prefer a modern, high-horsepower Restomod with a supercharged Hellcat engine dropped under the hood? Tell me your thoughts in the comments because I love reading how different generations view these classic machines. Today, finding an original, undamaged second-generation Charger is incredibly difficult because so many of them were wrecked on racetracks, destroyed in street races, or literally jumped through the air and smashed during the filming of classic movies and television shows. If you are lucky enough to find a clean, Hemi-powered 1969 Charger R/T at an auction today, you can expect to see the bidding easily cross the $150,000 mark, with rare, highly documented models routinely selling for well over $300,000. But the true value of the second-generation Dodge Charger cannot be measured in dollars and cents. It represents a time in American history when cars were not designed by cold computer algorithms to get the best possible fuel mileage, but were instead shaped by hand with clay by passionate, red-blooded enthusiasts who wanted to build something that looked fast, sounded angry, and made you feel alive every single time you turned the key. It is the definitive American muscle car, heavy, loud, incredibly fast, and completely unapologetic, and it will forever remain the baddest, most beautiful machine to ever roam the American highway. Thank you so much for watching today's deep dive into the legendary history of the Dodge Charger here on Modus. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, please make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your fellow car enthusiasts so we can keep bringing you the absolute best and most accurate classic car history on the internet. Have a great day, keep those engines revving, and I will see you in the very next video.